Hi, we're from Group 3. Now we're going to explain about forecast theories. All supply chain decisions made before demand has materialized are made to be a forecast, whereas demand forecast of future demand is used to determine the production or quantity. There are four methods to forecast the future demand. Those are moving average, simple exponential, Holt's model, and Holt's winter model. We can analyze and compare the function of those methods through the error measurement such as MSE, MAPE, MAD, etc., with their own respective function and purpose. So let's move to the first one, which is moving average. Moving average method is used when demand has no observable trend or seasonality and when the forecast ignores any trend or seasonality to be used as standard forecast number. Moving averages are used to identify trends and confirm reversal, but also used to identify areas of support and identify areas of resistance. In this case, systematic component of demand is equal to level. The level in period T is estimated as the average demand over the most recent n periods. So the function in moving average as followed will be explained more in the Excel. The current forecast for future periods in the same and based on the current level estimated will be discussed later by using this function. And after observing the demand for period T plus 1, we revise the estimates as this function below. The future forecast after the last level and forecast will be the same and follow the last one because there's no data, trend, and seasonality in the upcoming times. There is lack of moving average. Moving average based on past price, known as lagging indicator. So it won't show the changing trend in advance. It's only confirmed where the trend has changed.
So now moving on to simple exponential. So first of all, simple exponential is quite similar as the moving average, though there is one difference, which is that it involves a single coefficient. Now in simple exponential, the initial estimate of level LO is taken to be the average of all historical data because demand has been assumed to have no observable trend or seasonality. The future forecast after the last level and forecast uses the same principle, like moving average, because the lack of future data, trend, and seasonality. Now below, as you can see, is the equations, which will be explained later during the case discussion. So now we move on to the Holt's model. So first, the trend-corrected exponential smoothing method is appropriate when demand is assumed to have a level and a trend in the systematic component, but no seasonality. This method involves A and B coefficient to find level and trend. So the difference between Holt and the previous model is that there is level and trend. Now referring to the case, the systematic component of demand is equals to level B plus trend A. We can obtain an initial estimate of level and trend by running a linear regression between demand, which is dt, and time, period t, of the form of the equation below. In this case, running a linear regression between demand and the time periods is appropriate because we have assumed that demand has a trend but no seasonality. Thus, the relationship between demand and time is linear. So here, the constant B measures the estimate of demand A, which is time, equals 0, and is our estimate of the LO. The slope A measures the rate of change in demand period and is our initial estimates of the TO. Now in period T, given estimates of level LT and trend TT, the forecast is expressed as the equations below. Now after observing demand for period T, we revise the estimates for level and trends as follows. Now let's move on to the Holtz-Winter model, which is a more complex model of the previous discussed. So basically, Winter's model, the trend and seasonality corrected exponential smoothing method is appropriate when the systematic component of demand has a level, a trend, and plus a seasonal factor. So this is an additional factor that duplicates the whole thing. In this case, we have a systematic component of demand, which is equals to level plus trend times seasonal factor. So we use A, B, and Y coefficient to find level, trend, and seasonal factors respectively. So let's assume periodicity of demand to be P. We need initial estimates of level, which is LO, trend equals to TO, and seasonal factors, which is S1 and SP. We obtain these estimates using the procedure for static forecasting, which we're finding their decisionalized demands, regression level, and trend and seasonal factors with their respective formula. So in period T, given estimates of level, LT trend, TT, and seasonal factors, these are the equations as you can see below. Now on observing demand for period T plus 1, we revise the estimates for level, trend, and seasonal factors as follows by the equation below that. So to conclude what we have discussed so far, moving average equals to no trend or seasonality. So it's just the most basic method out of the four. Simple exponential smoothing. It has no trend or seasonality as well. Holt's model has trend but no seasonality, while the last and most complex is Winter's model has trend and seasonality.
So, I'm Michael. I will explain about the measures of forecast errors, mean squared error. So, basically, the forecast error for period T is given by ET, where the following holds by the equation of ET equal FT minus DT. One measure of forecast error is the mean squared error, or MSE, as the following hold uh, below. We stated the equation. Yeah. And the MSE can be related to the variance of the forecast error. We estimate that the random component of the demand has a mean of 0 and a variance of MSE. The MSE penalizes large errors much more significantly than small errors because all squared. If we select forecast methods by minimizing MSE, a method with a forecast error sequence of 10, 12, 9, and 9 will be preferred to a method with an error sequence of 1, 3, 2, and 20. It's a good idea to use the MSE to compare if the cost of a large error is much larger than the gains from very accurate forecasts. By using the MSE is appropriate when the error has a distribution that is symmetric about 0. So as we can see here, the define of the absolute deviation in period T, AT, to be the absolute of value of the error in period T, that is AT equal to ET, the equation we stated. Define the mean absolute deviation, or MAD, to be the average of the absolute deviation over all periods as expressed by MAD equals to the equation that we stated. The MAD can be used to estimate the standard deviation of the random component, assuming that the component is normally distributed. In this case, the standard deviation of the random component is S equal to 1.25 times MAD. We then estimate that the mean of the random component is 0, and the standard deviation of the random component of demand is S. Moving to the next slide. So MAD is a better measure of error than MSE if the forecast error doesn't have a symmetric distribution. Even when the error distribution is symmetric, MAD is an appropriate choice when selecting forecasting method if the cost of a forecast error is proportional to the error size. The percentage error of a forecast could be found by 80 per dt times 100. The mean absolute percentage error, or MAPE, is the average absolute error as a percentage of demand and is given by MAPE equals the equation that we stated. MAPE is a good measure of forecast error when the underlying forecast has significant seasonality and demand varies considerably from one period to the next. When a forecast method stops reflecting the underlying demand pattern, the forecast errors are unlikely to be randomly distributed around zero. So, as we can see here, in general, one needs a method to track and control the forecasting method, and one approach is to use the sum of forecast errors to evaluate the bias, where the following holds bias equals to the equation that we have stated, sigma et. The bias will fluctuate around zero if the error is truly random and not biased by one way or the other. Ideally, the slope of the base straight line passing through should be zero. So for the tracking signal is the ratio of the bias and the MAD and is given as TS equal bias per MAD. If the TS at any period is outside the range plus minus 6, this is a signal that the forecast is biased and is either under forecasting of TS smaller than minus 6 or over forecasting TS bigger than plus 6. This may happen because the forecasting method is flawed or the underlying demand pattern has shifted.
Selecting the best smoothing constant. When using exponential smoothing, the value of the smoothing constant chosen has a direct impact on the sensitivity of the forecast to recent data. In general, it is best to pick smoothing constants that minimize the error term that a manager is most comfortable with from among MSE, MAD, and MAPE that estimate the error size. In the absence of a preference among error terms, it is best to pick smoothing constants that minimize the MSE. The bias and TS are used to estimate if the forecast consistently over or under forecast, or if demand has deviated significantly from historical norms. So that is all for the forecast theories, and the theories application will be um, explained in Excel form.
Okay, thank you Anna, Alvin, and Michael for explaining the theory part. Now we're gonna move to the case study part or the question part. And in this case, we're gonna use Rocky as our examples, whereas Rocky is an Indonesian fast restaurant chain, and they're gonna explain the states where they have to deal with competitors like McDonald's, KFC, White Castle, Popeye, and Chick-fil-A. Whereas the problem is that there are a lot of trendsetters there, and they usually release some seasonal products, which means that they are affected by seasons, whether it's winter or summer or spring or fall. And this really forced Rocky to adapt into their strategies in order to compete. And so far they've operated for 4 years, and these are their data of the operations and the demand. And it's being divided into quarters, which is 4 quarters in each year. And each quarter is also affected by a season like winter, summer, or even fall and spring. And based on the data given, we're gonna try to forecast the quarterly data for the fifth year of operation in the States. And we're gonna use moving average, simple exponential, and Holt's model and also Winter's model to forecast the fifth year of operation data and demand. And yeah, we're gonna use the coefficient of 0.1 for the alpha, beta, and gamma, so it will be stable. And in order to analyze the forecast, we're gonna use evaluate the bias, TS, MAT, MAP, and MSE in order to know which forecast should be used from the previous operation in the states. And we're gonna also try to find out what could be inferred from their operation of 4 years data. And yeah, here are the data in other units. And the first thing that we're gonna do is that we're gonna try to copy this data to the Excel, so we can just do the analysis in Excel. Okay, then so after that we're gonna copy the data to the moving average first, and also the simple exponent and the Holts and the winters. And in this case, I've already copied the data since the beginning, so it will be faster. And don't forget to change the font, and also add some maybe cells in the borders in the cells. And remember, always copy from the first period and the 16th period, because in simple exponent and Holt's model it can be quite tricky. Whereas in this case, you can accidentally copy into the 0 period. Remember, always copy it in the first period, not the 0 period. Okay. And you also must do the same thing on the Holt's model and also on the Winters model in order to ensure that you can calculate the forecast. And remember, always copy from the first to the 16th period only. And then after you copy everything, you maybe realize that why do I have period and in numbers, and also why do I have the rating of key 1, key 2, key 3, and key 4? And why do I still use the number? Because if we use the quarterly sentence only, which is highlighted by the cell, we can't even really calculate the formula properly, because they only accept the numerical numbers instead of letters. And if we only use the key 1, key 2, and key 3, and key 4, we can't even calculate any of this from the slice demand, level, trend, until the errors calculation, which is quite fatal if we just use the key 1. So don't forget to not to use the key 1 or the key 3 or the key 3 and the key 4, but use the period numbers, because Excel only accepts numerical numbers for the calculation formula instead of using sentences. And yeah, remind yourself to check that every period is going accordingly, correctly, and consistently. Because if you don't do so, maybe you're gonna have a hard time in calculating all of the formula in Excel, since they don't even accept any sentence formula. And yeah, it will, if you make a mistake about that, you maybe cannot even count the slice demand and any of the calculations. Just don't forget to change the key 1 into period. It's really crucial and critical. And also don't forget to recheck your demand again, so it will be going accordingly and corresponding to the period in a correct order. And so we're gonna start from the moving average, but before that, we're gonna explain a bit about the formula first, which is quite important before we're gonna go advance to the Excel calculation. So we're gonna start discussing from the moving average first and about their formula, whereas in moving average, there is the trend of seasonality and I'm exponential, whereas in this case, we're gonna find from the level first. And formula is LT equals TT plus TT minus 1 plus blah blah divided by N. So LT means like it's the level of the moving average that's gonna be used for the forecast, and it usually starts from the fourth one or the third one, because the moving average usually has the fourth one, whereas LT equals to the level on that level and equals to the demand on that level plus the demand on the level minus 1 until the end divided by N. And N is the number of the demand that correspond to the level, like the amount, like it's the how many demand of a period that's being used. So yeah, for example, LT means that L4 equals to T4 plus T3 and blah blah divided by the total of period accounted for. And after we have found the level, we're gonna find the forecast, which is FT plus 2 equals LT plus 1, which means that the current level of a period equals to the forecast of the next period. And that's always the main rule or the basic rule of the moving average, and also simple exponent, which is really quite basic and it's like the main rule and it can be replaced at all. And yeah, after that we're gonna before we move to the simple exponent, I'm gonna explain why we haven't explained the error, because we're gonna explain the error later on after we've explained the winter. And we're gonna move to the simple exponent, which is quite similar to the moving average, but in this case we're gonna use LO, which is just of the average of all demand of all period that represents the initial level, and we're gonna use it to find the level of the next period, which is the initial level, using the formula of LD plus 1 on the level equals alpha multiplied by demand plus 1 minus alpha multiplied by level. And this applies for all of the level in the moving average. And in this case, the alpha will be, usually alpha will be 0.1, but yeah, that's the basic alpha. And the demand will also correspond to the demand on the same period that we want to look for the level at. And in this case, our alpha will be 0.1, and after we have already found the initial level, we're gonna use the alpha and the demand to find the next level, which is the first level, and we're also gonna use 1 minus alpha to find the level, and it will be multiplied in the level instead to find the first level. And yeah, for the forecast, it will be also the same like moving average, whereas ft plus 1 equals lt, which means the current level of a period equals the forecast of the next period, and so on. And for the future forecast, it will be like it will be the same, because the rules in moving average and exponential is that it will be the same. And the level below is not really important because it's just a backup formula, which doesn't really matter at all. And for the Holt model, it's quite complicated because Holt is affected by trend, whereas simple exponent and moving average isn't even affected by trend. And here comes the difference, whereas we're gonna find the level based on the initial level and trend, which we're gonna find using the regression, and the formula is LT plus 1 equals alpha multiplied by tt plus 1 plus 1 minus alpha multiplied by initial level, and t, which is the initial trend. And it's almost similar like the simple exponent, but the difference is that we have trend element in this one. And the trend can be also found by beta multiplied by L plus 1 minus LT, which is, let's just say, the L1 minus the initial level plus 1 minus beta multiplied by the initial trend. And then we can find the level initial trend using the regression formula based on the demand. And after we have found every level and trend, we're just gonna find the forecast using the formula of forecast equals level plus trend. And it's at ft plus 1 equals lt plus tt, means that the current forecast of period is based on the level and trend of the previous period. Well, that's what is the ft plus 1 equals lt plus ntt, means for the forecast that doesn't even have any demand, we're gonna use the last level and the last trend, but the last trend will be multiplied by the period ahead of that forecast, like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, in order to find the upcoming forecast which doesn't even have any demand data for now. And yeah, it's also for this one, remember that to find level we're gonna use alpha, but for find trend we're gonna use beta. And just in case that you wonder why it's different from the small explanation in terms of the future forecast, is because this one has a trend which is quite often decreasing or increasing, and that's why in the upcoming forecast it will show a trend of like it's gonna go upward instead of like fluctuating in the Winters model. And yeah, so that's about it for the Holt. And for the Winters model, it's quite complicated because we have to find some components which were in the decentralized demand. After we find it, we're gonna find the seasonal effect, the level and trend, and also then we're gonna find the decentralized demand of regression, which is also based on the level and trend that found from the decentralized demand. And after we're gonna find the seasonal factors, the initial one. And after finding the initial factors, we're gonna find the seasonal factors in this case. But we're gonna find the first 4 because usually we just find the first 4 factors because there's only 4 periods in this case. And the formula for the decentralized demand, the initial one is this as followed, which is the demand of the first period, and then the first period of the second quarter, plus the sum on the second between demand multiplied by 2 divided by 2 multiplied by the period, which is 4 in this case because there's 4 years and 4 quarters, and it's 16 divided by 4, it's 4. And it's for if the P is even, which is the period in this case. But if the period is quite different or it's odd, then it's gonna be all in the sum of the demand, which we rarely encounters at. And so yeah, in this case, like we're just gonna use the first period demand and then the fifth period demand, and the sum of the demand of the second until the third, fourth period in this case. For now, it's just kind of not really in our case at this time. And yeah, maybe you're wondering like why in the first two period of the decentralized demand and the second last point in the demand is empty is because we want to find the level and trend based on this only egg only. So we're just gonna empty the first two and also the second two and the last two cells. So we're just gonna use egg demand. No, like we're just gonna use 12 demand for this one to find the level and trend using this formula. And after we have found everything of the formula, we're just gonna find the level and trend, which is using the regression data on the regression method. And after that, we can just use level and trend to find the decentralized demand based on the regression, which is based on level and trend and also the period that corresponding to it. So in this case, the formula is TT means LT, L plus TT, which means the initial level plus the initial trend corresponding to the period. So remember, since Windows model used the model of that affected by trend unseasonality, we must take those two into account, and after we have found everything of the decentralized demand, we can find the seasonal factors, the initial one, by dividing the regression decentralized demand with the demand. In the demand divided by the decentralized demand, just don't be switched between of them. And after we have found everything of the initial seasonal factors, we're gonna find the first four initial factors, the first four seasonal factors, and it will be by using the first initial factors of each quarter divided by the number of periods. So in this case, it's gonna be the seasonal factor of first period and fifth period and then 9th period and then 13th period divided by R, which is period, which means 4. And after we have found the first four seasonal factors, we're gonna find the level and trend first using the corresponding formula, where the level is alpha multiplied by the demand of that period divided by the seasonal factors of that period, which is the first seasonal factors, and then plus 1 minus alpha multiplied by the level and trend of the initial one. So remember, alpha multiplied by demand divided by the seasonal factors plus 1 minus alpha multiplied by level and trend of the initial one. For this case, or the previous level and trend, in order to find the first level. And usually we can just find the first four level first, because if you want to find until the end, we get just this error division blah blah errors message. And after we have found the level, we're gonna find the trend, which is beta multiplied by level of the corresponding period, and then minus by the previous level plus 1 minus beta multiplied by previous trend or the initial trend in this case. And after we've already found the trend of that period, maybe we can just drag it down. And yeah, remember that it has quite of a similar formula with the previous trend, because trend it has like this similar formula with the Holt model. And then we're just gonna copy it and just find the first one first, because we only have four seasonal factors in the beginning. And after we have found the level and trend, we're just gonna need to find the first four seasonal, the rest of the seasonal factors, which is really important. And we're gonna use the formula of gamma multiplied by the first demand and also the first seasonal factors, because let's just say the previous factors or the previous demand about 4 or 3 period, depends on the period, because we haven't even found the corresponding level and trend also the factors of the corresponding period, so we have to do that. And yeah, after we have already find the seasonal factors, we can just find the level and trend before calling the forecast. And don't forget to track down the level and also track down the trend, so we can even find the forecast and of the value from the seasonal factors, level and trend, before moving on to find the forecast, which is the previous level of a period plus the previous level of a period being calculated and multiplied to the seasonal factors of that period. So let's just say the initial level plus the initial trend multiplied in the first seasonal factors to find the first forecast. and it will be applied so on until maybe in the last period that has the demand. Well, for the last 4 period, it's quite different because in order to do that, we have to use a different formula since we can only find the level of 10 until the last data with demand, but for the seasonal factors, we can find it until the end to the point if when there's no data at all, and we're gonna use the formula of ft plus 1 equals lt plus l, which is the period ahead multiplied by the trend and then multiplied by the seasonal factors. And in this case, we're gonna use the last four seasonal factors correspondingly. Although we can use maybe the last four seasonal factors that has demand on the last four seasonal factors that has any demand. And it's up to you because the result is quite similar. And then after we have already maybe found the forecast, we're gonna move to the errors. Start from the error first, which is error means ET equals FT minus TT, which means error can be found by forecast minus demand because it what shows the difference between the forecast and the demand. Like how much bigger is the error or the difference in it. After we're gonna use the AET, which is the absolute error, which means like error is being pulled out of any negativity signs. And then we're gonna find the error percentage, which can be found by 100 multiplied by the error divided by the demand, the actual demand. And then we're gonna also find the error square, which can be just found by multiplying or squaring the demand we have found or the error demand we have found. And we're gonna use the error absolute for MAD. Well, for the MAB, we're gonna use the error percentage, and MS is gonna also be based on error square. And then for the TS, we're gonna use the formula of bias divided by MAD, which means error total divided by the MAD total, which is quite important because it signifies whether and indicates whether the error is quite undershadowed or underforecasted or forecasted. And then we're gonna start from the MSE, which means mean square error, that it can be found by dividing the total of error square by the number of period. And then there's MAD, which is mean absolute deviation, that we can find by finding the total absolute error divided by n on the total period. And then we're gonna find the MAPE, which is mean absolute persistence error, which we can find by dividing the error percentage by the n. And also we're gonna find the TS, which can be found by bias divided by MAT. Bias is the total error, and MAT is the what you can find by using the absolute error. And TS indicates something that's quite important because it shows that whether the error is forecasted or underforecasted. If it's below -6, that is underforecasted and is biased. And if it's above +6, it's overforecasted and is also biased, which is not good, and we want to keep it stable. And then we're gonna move to the moving average as our Excel explanation. So we're gonna start from the moving average first, whereas moving average means that we're gonna use an average of some period to order to find the forecast of a certain period. And usually in this case, we're gonna use maybe first forecast of a period and divide by 4 to find the first forecast and the first level. And to be honest, this one isn't really that accurate because in this case, we will only start from the first 4 level and we're gonna skip the first 4 forecasts, which means that it's not gonna be full and it's gonna be complete, which is not that accurate and reliable. But still, the result for forecast can be used for maybe as a number standard or as a basis for forecast. So in this case, we're gonna use the formula of finding level, whereas we're gonna use the first 4 level and use their average to find the first level, which is L4. And in this case, just like the formula, we're gonna use the TT, which is T4, and demand 3, and demand 2, and demand 1, which is previously calculated and divided by 4. And in order to do so, we're gonna use the formula of average, and we're gonna use the block. We're gonna block all of the demand, and just enter it. After we found the first level, we're just gonna need to take it down until the end in order to find the rest of the level. So it can be automatically because the level will just moves averagely. Like the level will just move depends on the period and depends on the demand of the next period. That's what this moving average means. And then we can also find the forecast of the next quarter, which is gonna be based on the first on the level of the previous quarter or on the previous period. In this case, we just need to type equals and then the cells of the previous level. And we're just gonna need to return until the end or until the first quarter. And since we already found the first forecast of the first quarter, it will represent all of the quarter up ahead, because in moving average, the first quarter or the first period that got forecasted in the future will represent all of the forecast from the up ahead. And it also applies for the exponential, although to be honest, it is not really accurate or it is not really that quite reliable, but it can be used as a standard number or as a base number. And this comes because there is no even any trend or seasonality or demand to even predict or calculate the forecast accurately. After that, we're gonna move to calculate the error, which is simple. We just need to calculate the minus between forecast and also demand. We just need to input the cell of forecast minus the cell of demand. And after we have already found the first error, we just need to take it out again. However, don't forget to sum up all of the error in order to find the bias, which can be used to find the TS. And I suggest to highlight it by using maybe underline or others. And after we are finding the error and the total error, we can now find the absolute error, which is the error but without any negativity, or it got put from any negative signs, and if it error is got turned into a positive error. And in this one, we're just gonna need to use the formula of equals abs, which is absolute, and divided by and then highlight the previous one. And don't do the same mistake as me, whereas I forgot to put the abs. Always put the abs and then click the error cells and just take it down as usual, like the error. And after we have found the absolute, we just need to sum it up again, because this sum of error absolute can be used to find the MAD, which will be explained later on. And after that, we can find the error square, which is the square of its error, and we just need to, we can use even and the error on the error absolute, but I suggest to just use the error absolute sometimes, but it's up to you because it's still the same. And we're gonna use the formula of sum as key, and we're just gonna click the error absolute, and we're just gonna take it down until the end. Sorry, a bit of mistake. And in the end, and after we have found every square error, we just need to sum it up again, because the total of square error can be used to find the MSE, which will be explained later on. And then the error percentage is just can be found by multiplying 100 by the error absolute, I suggest, for this one, because of the negativity, divided by demand. In order to find, sorry, a bit of a mistake in here, because I forgot to put the proper sign. And then we just need to add a cage, and then we found the error. Remember, we just need to divide it by the corresponding demand of the same period. And don't forget to sum it up, because the percentage error and its total can be used to find the MAPE, which is really important later on. After we have already found every error and error square and also error absolute and percentage, we're gonna move to the MSE, which is mean square error, MAD, mean absolute deviation, MAPE, mean absolute percentage error, and TS, which is the signal. In MSE, we can actually use two formulas, which is the MSE formula that can be found by dividing total of error square by the number of periods that's involved. However, in moving average, it can be a bit tricky, because we must minus the total of period by the periods that involved. And in Excel, we're gonna do the Excel way, which is we're gonna use the error. However, we're gonna use the first one first and log it or stabilize it using F4. And also, we're gonna input the first one first, because we're gonna do it the accumulative way, and it's divided by the total of period or the corresponding period minus 4. It's minus 4 because the first forecast of the first 4 period isn't even accounted for, so that's why we must divide minus it by 4, because it's not accounted for, and if we count it, we can even find the accurate MSE. And after we do this, we just need to enter it, and then we found the MSE, which is quite similar with the first error square, because it's still the first one, and I just need to take it down. And however, we need to notice that there's a bit of a change in here, and it's because we locked the first error. Well, the next error is not locked because we want it to be accumulative from the beginning until the end. And yeah, after we have turned into the end, we will find the last MSE, which is the final MSE. And even if we're gonna calculate manually using the normal formula, we'll get the same result, whereas we're just gonna divide our total error square by the number of period, which is in this case is 12, and we're just gonna use like P19 minus 4 because the first 4 period is even accounted for, and tada, we found the same result of MSE. So it's the same way, but it's just different method, or it's the same result, but it's just different method. And then we're gonna move to the MAT, which is quite similar to the MSE, but it just has different formula, whereas it's gonna use the absolute error to find the result. And in this case, we're gonna do the Excel view first, which is different from the formula one, which is the total of absolute error divided by the total of the period. And in this case, in Excel, we're just gonna use the sum. Well, MSE use sum square, we're just gonna use sum because in this one, you don't have to square up the error at any circumstances. And we're just gonna also click the first error absolute and also click it again. But don't forget to stabilize the first click one because we want it to be accumulative like the previous one. Remember, Excel formula will always be accumulative. And for the period, don't forget to click the current period minus 4 because we didn't even count the first 4 period. Sorry for my mistake before. And then we see that the first one is similar because it's the first period, but then when we take it down and it shows the accumulative results, we will find the final result of MAT. And if you want to also clarify whether it's correct or no, we can also use the normal formula, which is the total of absolute error divided by the corresponding period. And in this case, just click the total of absolute error divided by last period minus 4. And yeah, we have the same result in this case, which means that we have found the right MAT. And then for the MAP, which is the mean absolute substance error, we're just gonna use the Excel formula first, whereas we're just gonna use the total of the error percentage divided by the number of corresponding period. However, in this case, we just need to use the average of everything because it's not really dependent on the period, and we can just use the average of all of the error percentage. And yeah, just if you want to use the Excel way, don't forget to lock the first period and then just leave the next cell or the period not locked because we want to do it the accumulative way. Remember, always stabilize using F4 on the first cell you click, and then after that, just let it be because we want it to be accumulative by doing so. And then we found the first MAP, which is still the same because it's still the first period. And we just need to take it down again until the end, and we will find the last on the final MAPE. And in order to clarify that, we will do the same thing again, whereas we're gonna just divide the total error percentage with the total corresponding period, which is 16 minus 4. And in the Excel, just need to use the P90, which is the last period, minus 4 for the period. And then, voila, we get the same result in this case, which means that we have the right MABE. And then lastly, for the TS, which is can be found by dividing the bias, which is the total error, divided by MAT. We're gonna use the Excel first, whereas in the Excel, we're not in the first error, and also click the next one. But however, don't forget to stabilize the first one by giving it an F4 or a dollar sign, and then divide it by the MAT. And also don't forget to stabilize the first MAT cell, and just let it be for the next one, so it will be accumulative. And we just need to take it down so we can find the result because it's already accumulative. And we found the last result of the TS. And in order to clarify it again, we're gonna use the same formula, which is bias, which is the total error, divided by the MAT. And we found the same result. And after that, we can also highlight the last result of the MSC, MAT, MAP, and TS, so it won't be really hard to recognize, so we won't be really confused to know which one is the last result. And then we're gonna also analyze the standard deviation to show whether it deviates a lot or not by using 1.25 multiplied by the MAT. So in this case, we just have to multiply it by the MAT we have found, and then we found the standard deviation. After that, we need to find the TS range, which is we're gonna do it by finding the highest TS, which is in this case 2, until the lowest one, which is 6.61, the negative 6.61. And it's kind of a good sign because it shows that it's not over forecasted and it's not under forecasted. But however, keep in mind that actual moving average isn't really that reliable because it doesn't have any kind of seasonality. And yeah, we can even conclude that whether it's good or not because we haven't even calculate the other error measurements from the simple exponential, Holt's model, and Winter's model, which we'll discuss later on. But still, it's not quite bad because the TS is quite good and the deviation is not really high, and the error is also quite acceptable. Moving on onto the simple exponential, which is quite similar to moving average. In this case, we can also do a bit of a same thing with the simple exponent, simple thing, but we cannot find the initial level first in this one. And the difference is that simple exponential compared to moving average, we will find the first initial level, which is the LO, and we won't skip any forecast period at all, which is really different from moving average, and it's more reliable, I would say, than moving average. In simple exponential, we'll use the LO instead, and instead of skipping the first 4 period, we're just gonna find the LO using the average based on every demand. And yeah, that's why it more accurate because it accounts of the demand, which is good. And yeah, just like the formula said, LO means the average of all demand from all period, which means that simple exponential compared to moving average is more quite of a accurate one. And to find the LO, we can just find the average of all demand using the formula of average and just block all of the cell of the demand in this case. And then we have it, we'll find the first level. And yeah, I suggest not to forget to maybe, it's my opinion for little advice to change all of the format in the cells and make it centered, and don't forget to change it to only 2 decimal behind to make it more accurate sometimes and to make it easier to understand and see. And yeah, we have found the first initial level on the LO, and then we're gonna find the next level, which is the L1. And in this case, our alpha is 0.1, which is the standard one, and we're gonna use it to find every level in this one. And we're gonna use the formula, which is LT plus 1 equals alpha multiplied by TT plus 1 minus alpha multiplied by the level. In this case, the alpha will be multiplied using the formula, which is 0.1 multiplied by the demand of that period, which is TT plus 1, and then plus 1 minus 0.1 multiplied by the LO on the level of previous period. And then you have it, you found the first level. And after that, you just gonna need to take it down to the bottom, so we can just find the rest of the level instead. So yeah, after we have found like every level required for the simple exponential, we're gonna find the forecast. And the forecast is also like the moving average based on the previous level, so we just need to click the previous level, and then we just need to take it down until the end. And after that, we don't really need to worry anything about anymore because we have found the forecast until the first period of the 5th year. And yeah, the first forecast of the 5th year, or in the first quarter of the 5th year, just like in moving average, the exponential use the same principle, which is the first forecast of the future demand or the future forecast represents all the forecast up ahead. So, in this case, we just need to click it using the equals and then just click the cells and then just drop it. Remember, the principle of moving average and simple exponent from the future forecast is that it's the same. Like every forecast will be the same because there's no trend or seasonality in both moving average and simple exponent. But yeah, I would say simple exponent is more accurate because it has the first 4 forecasts compared to moving average, but still, it's not as reliable as the Holt or Winter, and I suggest just to use the forecast as a basic number or a standard number for the forecast. And then we're just gonna find the error like the usual. We're just gonna calculate the forecast minus demand, and just gonna find every error and just gonna sum it up like usual, like the one we did on the moving average. And after we have summed the error, which is quite smaller than the moving average, we're gonna find the absolute error just using the formula of apps, and then just click the cell, and we're gonna find the absolute error, which removes any negativity from the error on the original error. And we're gonna find the sum gain to being used for the maybe to find the MAT, also with the total error that can be used to find the TS later on. And we're just gonna square up the error using the sum square. And in this case, it's also okay to just use the absolute error instead of the normal error. Just kind of safe sometimes, but yeah. And we're gonna find all of the sum square of error for our period, and it's gonna sum it up that we can use to find the MAPE. Oh no, to find the MSE. Sorry, my bad. And after that, we're gonna just find the error percentage, which is 100 multiplied by error, which is the error absolute in this case to make it safe, and positive, divided by demand. And there we have it. We finally found our first error percentage, and we're just gonna sum it up again to be used for the MAPE. Okay, so after we have found all of the error calculations, we're just gonna calculate the MSE, MAT, MAP, and DS using the Excel formula first. Although we can also use the normal formula, which is quite of a manual one, but we're just gonna use it later on. Whereas MSE is just gonna using total of error square divided by the period, while MAT is just the total of absolute error divided by the number of period, and MAPE is the total of process error divided by number of period, and DS is just the bias or the sum of error divided by the period or by the MAT total. But yeah, in this case, we have all of the period because we don't even skip the first forecast. And for the MSE, we're just gonna use the formula of sum square. We're just gonna click on the first error, and don't forget to click it again, and don't forget to stabilize the first cell you click, so it will be more accumulative. And then after we have clicked the cell that we need, don't forget to divide it by number of period. And in this case, we're just gonna use the number of period, which is 16. And we're gonna click this cell, but we're just gonna click the first one first because it's gonna be accumulative using the Excel calculation. And there we have it. We have finally found the MSE using the Excel calculation, which seems to be accurate because it's already accumulatively counted. And then we're just gonna count the MAT. But before that, we're just gonna count the MSE manually first to clarify that it's correct, and we're just gonna divide the total error square, and just gonna divide it by the total of period. Just gonna click the cells, and then it's correct. And now we're just gonna count the MAT using the Excel formula first, whereas we're gonna click the first absolute error, and also gonna divide it by number of period. And let's just use sum, and just click the cell of the absolute error, and just click it again. And don't forget to stabilize the first cell using F4 so the value won't change and it can be accumulative until the end. And after that, you're just gonna need to divide it by the corresponding period until the 16th period. Remember, we don't even minus it by 4 because we don't even skip the first forecast. And yeah, the first one is always the same in the error, and then it becomes accumulative until the end. And yeah, we finally found the MAD and also the MSE alongside of it. Remember, always don't forget to clarify your MAT if you have done finding it. And always never ever forget to lock or stabilize the first value on the first cell you click so it will be remain its value or you can retain its value. And now we're just gonna clarify the MAT by using the cell of the total absolute error divided by the total of period, and yeah, it's the same. So we have the right MAT. And for MAPE, we just need to find the average of the error percentage by clicking the first error. Don't forget to also stabilize the first cell to make it retain its value and also to make it accumulative until the end. And there we have it, the first MAPE, which is similar to the error because it's the first one. And take it down until we find the first or the total MAPE. And remember, don't forget to always stabilize the first value you click, whether it's on MSE, MAT, MAP, and DS because it's always the rule. And then we're just gonna clarify it by using the manual calculation, whereas we're gonna divide the total of error percentage sheet cell by the period cell. And then there you have it. We have the same result of MAPE. And lastly, we're gonna find the TS, whereas TS will be found by using sum, and we're just gonna click which is the sum of bias, and divide by sum of MAT. We're just gonna click the error first, which is the bias. Remember, don't forget to stabilize the first cell you click, and after that just let it be. And don't forget to divide it by the MAT. And remember, when you also click on the first cell of MAT, don't forget to stabilize the first cell by using F4. Just click on the first cell, but on the next one, just let it be, so it'll be accumulative. And then you have it, your TS, your first one, and you just need to take it down. Accumulatively, and you'll find the accumulative results. And don't forget to highlight the error measurements result with any colors so it will be easy to find or understand about the final result. And before we can go to the essence, we can also clarify the TS, whereas we're gonna use the formula of bias, which is the total of errors divided by MAT on the total of MAT. And then we have it. We have the same TS as the calculation. And for the TS, we just need to find the lowest one, which is minus 1.56, and the highest one is 2.36. And we just need to write it down. And it's a good one because it shows that it's not too under forecasted and it's not too over forecasted. And then for the standard deviation, we just need to multiply 1.25 by the MAT we have found. And then I just need to click that one. And there you have it. All of the measurements on the similar exponent. However, we can even say that if it's good or no, but for sure, it has lower results of error measurements than moving average, which is good. But still, we can't even fully rely on it because even though it has a good TS range and a more balanced TS range and has lower standard deviation, we haven't even compared it to the Holt model and this model, so we can even say that it's accurate or no. So yeah, but for sure, it's quite better than moving average because it is a constant forecast and it has low error, and it also can be used as a standard number of forecasts for the future demand. And then moving on to the Holt model after this one. So in the Holt model, in this case, which is really different from simple exponential and moving average that we have discussed before, this one has a factor called trend, which is quite of a giving a bit of a regressing or an increasing pattern, but still, it shows that it's quite more of an accurate forecast than simple exponential and moving average. And yeah, like with exponential, it starts from level 0 and trend 0, whereas we have an alpha and beta. Whereas level, we're gonna use alpha and beta, trend is gonna use beta. And we're gonna find the initial level and trend using the regression, which we can use by using data analysis in the Excel, which is the data analysis and regression. Remember, the first axis is the all of the demand, while the x-axis will be all of the period accounted for. And then we just need to click OK on the new worksheet. And we will find the coefficient, first intercept coefficient and the x coefficient from the result. And it will represent the level and trend, whereas intercept will represent level and x variable will represent the trend. And we just need to copy it to the Holt model level and trend. Remember, use space spatial instead of the base normal to copy it in a fast way, and just use the transpose one. And don't forget to make it centered and at maybe a border in the cells. And remember, never ever forget to format your cells into 2 digits behind for all cells, so it will be like easier to understand it and it can give more accurate results. And you can do it just by clicking right click, format cell, and number, and just put 2 decimal places behind. And then we're just gonna find the level and trend. We have just found the level and trend of the initial one. We're gonna find the next one by using the formula, which we have discussed earlier. And in this one, it's gonna be started from the level first, which is LT equals alpha multiplied by demand plus 1 minus alpha multiplied by initial level plus trend. So in this case, we're gonna use the formula of alpha multiplied by the demand of that level plus 1 minus alpha multiplied by the previous level and trend, which is the initial level and trend in this case. We just need to click it and just plus trend, and there we have it. We found the first level. We just have to enter it this one, and there we have it. We found the first level, and then we're just gonna find the next trend, which is using the formula of trend equals L beta multiplied by the current level minus the previous level plus 1 minus beta multiplied by the previous trend. In this case, we'll use the beta of 0.1, just like alpha, which is 0.1. I'm just gonna use the normal calculation. However, keep in mind that level always use alpha, while delta always use trend when calculating it. And it is quite advisable that maybe you can just track down the level first, but it's up to you sometimes. And then we're just gonna find the level first using the calculation. Is alpha multiplied by the current level minus the previous level plus 1 minus alpha multiplied by the previous trend. Just click the cell of the previous trend and there you have it. You finally found the level and trend of the next period. And what you should do next is you just need to take it down, whether you want to start from the level first or from the trend first, but it's better to start from the level first because the trend is quite of a level dependent. And after finding the level and trend of all period, what we must do next is that we need to find the forecast of each period. So in this case, we just need to calculate the level of the first or initial level and then the initial trend. And then we just need to drag it down until the end. However, after we have already find the forecast from the first period and the 16th period, in finding the next 4 future forecasts, which is the 5th year, we gonna use a different formula. It's not really different, but we still need to use it because the number of years ahead affects the formula, and in this case, we're gonna use the last level and last trend to find the last 4 forecasts. So the formula said ft plus n equals lt plus nt plus t. So as I said, n is the number of period ahead, and ft can be represented by the last level. So we're not just gonna use the other formula. We're just gonna use this formula because it's from the future one. And in this case, the n is 1. Is the number of period ahead, and then we're just gonna use the last level plus the last trend, and don't forget to stabilize the last level and trend because we don't want the value to change since we don't even have any level and trend in the upcoming period. And don't forget to multiply it by 1, which can be found by using the last period minus by 16, which is the passing period, which will also correspond to all of the upcoming forecasts. And then don't forget to just enter it. And after that, we just need to drop it below or just drag it below, and we will find the last 4 forecasts with their corresponding ahead period. And then after we have found the last forecast, we just gonna need to calculate the error as usual, which can be found by forecast minus demand is the actual demand, and then we just need to take it down. And don't forget to also sum up the error, so it can be used as a bias to find the TS later on. And this time we have quite a low one. And for the error absolute, don't forget to put the apps and click the error or the assist error to make it out of remove from all any negativity or negative signs. And as usual, don't forget to submit up again because it's really needed to be used for the MAT later on, especially in clarifying it. And for the error square, just don't forget to use the sum square to square up all of the error. And as okay, just use the absolute error because it's already positive and more safe. After that, you just take it down until the end. And don't forget to submit up again too, because we can use it to find the MSE, especially in clarifying it when we have found the MSE using the Excel formula later. And then we're gonna move the error percentage, which is 100 multiplied by error divided by the actual demand. And in this case, just use the absolute error because it's already positive, and just use the demand. And then don't forget to take it down below after we have found the first error. And also, just like the previous calculations, don't forget when we have already dropped or tracked down the errors percentage, don't forget to sum it up because we can use the sum to find the MAPE. And then after we have found the sum of our error and also the calculations of our errors, we're just gonna start to go in calculating the MSE. And we're just gonna use the Excel formula first in this case. So in this case, we're just gonna use the sum square as usual. And we're just gonna click on the first error. And remember, don't forget to stabilize the first cell you click. So it will retain its value and it can become accumulative. And you can do it by clicking the F4. And don't forget to divide it by the corresponding period. After you have found the first one, you just need to drag it down. And then there you have it. You will find the accumulative MSE until the end. And we're just gonna clarify it later on with the MAT, MAP, and TS. And yeah, now for the MAD, we're just gonna do the Excel view first. Whereas for the Excel method, we're just gonna use the sum and click on the first absolute error. And as usual, don't forget to stabilize it using F4 on the first cell that you click, while the rest you just can leave it be. And then don't forget to divide it by the breadth of the corresponding period. And there you have it. You just need to take it down as usual. And then you have the accumulative and the final total MAT. And remember, in MAPE, don't forget to stabilize the first cell. And for MAPE, you just need to use the average formula. Whereas you should click on the error. Oh no, sorry, my bad. I'm gonna mess up a bit on this because I want to show you that you must remain concentrating when you are doing this calculation, because usually instead of pressing on the error percentage, I use the error absolute, which is kind of wrong. And remember, always concentrate on doing this calculation. And yeah, I'm just gonna change it to the error percentage, and just gonna change the error percentage. Don't forget to put the F4 on the stabilizer on the first cell, and just take it down until you find the accumulative MAPE, and there you have it. And lastly, for the TS, we just need to use the formula of sum. You just need to click on the error, and don't forget to also stabilize the first cell you click, and just leave the last to let it be without any stabilization, and divide it by the MAT you already found, and don't forget to stabilize 2 on the first MAT you already found, which is the first cell, and then you have it. You just need to take it down, and then you found the accumulative TS. And then we're just gonna clarify it whether if this TS right or not. And remember, don't forget to put a background color so the measurement of error can be easily identified when you're gonna calculate it. And then we're gonna clarify it first from the MAT, whereas we're gonna divide the total of absolute error by the number of period, and then we click on the number of absolute error and the number of period, and there you have it. We found the MAT, which is exactly like the Excel formula results, and we're just gonna do the same for the MAPE, which is dividing the error percentage sum with the total of period, and we have the same result too. And for the MSE, we're just gonna do the same, whereas we're gonna click the sum of error square divided by the number of period, and then there we have it. We have the same result too, like the Excel formula. And then we're just gonna also count the bias, which is actually similar to the error sum, and the TS is also based on the error sum divided by on the number of corresponding period. And then the TS, we're just gonna find the highest one first, whereas in this case it's 2.39 until negative 2.16, which is actually quite good though. And for the standard deviation, just don't forget to multiply 1.35 with the MAT. In this case, we realize that Holt model has quite of a good TS range, which is not too over forecasted or under forecasted and not too biased. And overall, it has a good MAT, MAP, MSE, bias, TS, and standard deviation compared to subexponent and also compared to moving average, which means that it's more reliable. Although it can be said that Holt's model has quite of an increasing trend or increasing pattern in its forecast, which is quite of a which is kind of shows that it's not as accurate as this model, but still it's good because compared to the simple exponent, it has a lot of error, and yeah, we can see so whereas exponent has minus 58, well, with average at minus 60, yet Holt's model has minus 2.5, which is really good, and it shows that it's more reliable and accurate to use as a forecast, thanks to the trend that exists on the Holt's model. Well, I guess that's all for the Holt's model, and after that we're gonna move to the Hellas one, which is the Winter's model. That's more complicated. Model, which is more complicated than the previous three methods, it's because Windows model have a lot of components and it also affected by seasonal factor and trend. So not just only trend like the host method, and to find the seasonal factor and trend and level, we also must find some other components first, like seasonalized demand, and then after that we're gonna find the seasonalized demand of regression, which is based on the level and trend from the regression, and then the initial factors and seasonal factors and others, which is quite complicated, but yeah, everything starts from the seasonalized demand. And in this case, we also have three coefficients, which are alpha, beta, and gamma. And we're gonna just use the coefficient of 0.1, whereas level is affected by alpha, trend is by beta, and seasonal factor is by gamma. And I'm gonna start by finding the seasonalized demand first using the following formula. And in this one, we're gonna use the period of 4 because we have 4 years, but 4 quarters, so it means that there's 4 period in each year. So yeah, the period is 4 and it's even for this one. And yeah, we are just gonna divide the 16 period into 4 quarters, so it means that it has 4p or 4 period. And we're gonna use the even formula, which is kind of more complicated, but yeah, we need to use it to find the seasonalized demand by we're not counting the first two seasonalized demand and the last two seasonalized demand, but we're gonna count the seasonalized demand in order to find the level and trend from the regression. And so on, we're just gonna start by using the existing demand data to find the seasonalized demand, because in order to find seasonal factors and the regression seasonalized demand, we must find the normal or an initial seasonalized demand first. And so we're gonna like just sum the first demand and then the first demand the second quarter, and then just sum the demand that's stuck between it, and then just multiply it by 2 divided by 2 multiplied by the period that we have using the corresponding formula, which I will explain soon, because this formula is actually, to be honest, the one that makes this methods is quite hard and makes it more complicated, yet it makes it more accurate, I would say. So yeah, and of course the reason why we must not count on the two first season and the first period and the last two period estimate is because of the period, and also because of the two numbers that exist in the formula, because we assume that those two first period and the two last period is quite affected by a factor, and yeah, we're also gonna use the first period in the first quarter and the second quarter to find the first seasonalized demand, which is using formula as followed. First, we're gonna click the first demand and then the first demand in the second year, and then the sum of the demand that's stuck between it, and then we're gonna multiply it by the number of period we have, which is 2. Oh no, which is multiplied by 2 first, sorry, my bad. And then we're gonna divide it by the number of period we have, in this case, which is 4. And remember, because we only have one number, don't forget to stabilize it. And then we're also gonna multiply it by 2, so the value won't change by stabilizing it. And there we have it. We have the first seasonalized demand. And then we just need to take it down. After we have found all of the seasonalized demand, we're gonna find the level and trend using this data by using the data analysis again in the Excel, and we're gonna tune the regression again. Whereas the y-axis is the seasonalized demand, only the egg one, and this time it's not the demand because just gonna use seasonalized demand to find the regression of the initial level and trend, and we're just gonna use the corresponding period of the decentralized demand as the x-axis. And I'm going to click OK, and then there you have it. The intercept coefficient is the level in the initial level, and the x variable coefficient is the initial trend of the TO. And now just need to copy it, and don't forget to spatial paste it on the level and trend. And don't forget to click transpose. And remember, as usual, don't forget to change the border of the column on the row on the cell, and also don't forget to format cell of on the cell and give it a 2 decimal behind format, so it will be easier to understand, because sometimes numbers can kinda confuse us if it's too much. And then after we have found the initial level and trend, we're gonna find the regression decentralized demand using this formula, which is initial level plus trend multiplied by the corresponding period. So in this case, we just need to use the initial level plus trend and multiplied by the period already existing. After that, we just need to enter it. After we have do it, we just need to, oh yeah, don't forget to also stabilize the level and trend, because we already have one, so we don't want the value to change. And by doing so, we can find the decentralized demand of regression from the 16th period. And there you have it. After that, we're just gonna also start finding the seasonal factors, especially the initial seasonal factors. And yeah, a bit of a reminder that this initial level and trend will also be used later on for the level and trend and forecast too, which is quite of a complicated, but it will be explained later on. So we're just gonna go to the seasonal factors, which can be found by dividing the actual demand by the decentralized demand, and in this case, we're just gonna divide it using the Excel formula simply by just taking the demand divided by the decentralized demand, and we found the initial seasonal factors, and we just need to take it down. However, after this, we're gonna get in the tricky part, because in order to find the real seasonal factors, we can only find the first 4 seasonal factors. And we're gonna use this formula, which is we're gonna use the first demand of each first quarter of the year, and then we're gonna divide it by number of period. And in this case, we're just gonna calculate the first demand of the first year, second demand of the second year, first demand of the third year, and the first demand of the fourth year, and divided by 4, which is 4 period. And yeah, we're gonna do the Excel calculation after this, because it must be according to this formula to find the seasonal factor, which is really important. And we're just gonna use the normal calculation, which is taking the first demand of the first year, and then the first demand of the second year. Yeah, it's kind of tricky in this one because it's quite a lot of numbers. And the third year, and also the fourth year. And then simply divide it by 4. And then just return on the 4 first seasonal factors. And there you have it, the first 4 seasonal factors. And then we're just gonna start utilizing this formula, and we're gonna start from the level first before we do the trend, which is alpha multiplied by the current demand divided by the current seasonal factors plus 1 minus alpha multiplied by the previous level and trend. So in this case, we're just gonna use alpha multiplied by the current demand, which is the current actual demand, not the decentralized one, and then divided by the seasonal factors in the same level. And don't forget to calculate it with 1 minus alpha. It is gonna be a bit tricky though. Multiplied by the level of and trend of the previous period. Sorry, I'm a bit not focusing in there. And yeah, don't forget to put gauge sometimes in the formula, because it's really needed to put it in the formula, so it won't be really mixed. And there you have it, the first level. And the first thing that we're gonna do is that we're gonna take it down. Oops, I gotta take it down. And yeah, we know that there's this div 0 because we have even found the trend, and I've just removed the last 4 trend because it's the last level because it's too overlapping. And then after we have found the level, we're gonna move on the trend. It's just gonna be using this formula, and yeah, keep in mind that this division can also be found after we have finally found the seasonal factors. And sorry, I forgot to remove this part. And then we're gonna code the trend, which is 1, which is the formula is beta multiplied by current level minus previous level plus 1 minus beta multiplied by previous trend, which is the same as the way to find trend in the previous Holt's method. And it's just gonna multiply alpha with the current level minus the previous level plus 1 minus the beta multiplied by the previous trend, and there we have it. And as usual, the trend after the first 4 trend is still presented in div 0, like the level, and it's because we haven't found a seasonal factor. And after we have found the seasonal factors, we will be able to find the level and trend in a complete manner. And then we're gonna find the condensation, which is based on the gamma multiplied by the demand of the first period plus the seasonal factors on the first period, and then plus 1 minus beta minus gamma multiplied by the first seasonal factors. No, sorry, multiplied by the multiplied by the seasonal factors. So like in this one, just click on the first demand and then the first level, and plus 1 minus gamma multiplied by the four seasonal factors. And then there we have it. We finally found the seasonal factors, and yeah, when we track it down, we finally able to find all of the level and trend, which is a good news because it got us to the last step before forecasting. And I want to remind, like, it is better to track it down until the last cell of the forecasted period, because we also want to use the last let's say the last period of the factors for the forecast, which is quite important in winter. And for our case, we're just gonna use the formula of level plus trend multiplied by seasonal factors. So in this way, the previous level plus the previous trend multiplied by the current seasonal factors. And then there we have it. We have our forecast, and we just need to take it down until the 16th period in this case. However, the last one is quite different from the previous forecast before, because in this one, we don't have any data, but we have the last 2 level and trend to be used as our data, and we can use 2 types of seasonal factors, which is whether we can use really the seasonal factors we already counted from the 5th year, or maybe the last 4 seasonal factors in the 4th year, which is quite different with the 5th year, but the difference is not really high and significant. And in this case, we're just gonna do the formula of level plus trend. And remember, don't forget to log the level, because it's really necessary, and also the trend. And don't forget to multiply the trend with 1. So we must multiply the trend with how many period ahead is we're gonna forecast to. And of course, don't forget to multiply it with the first seasonal factor of maybe in the 4th year or maybe in the 5th year. It's up to you. But we're gonna start from the 4th year first, and after we do that, just take it down. And don't forget to change the multiplication value with the trend from 1, 2, 3 to 4. Just adjust it with the number of period ahead for the trend, because the trend must be multiplied with the number of period ahead going to be forecasted. And then for the second one, we can just use the last 4 seasonal factors in the 5th year, which is more safe, to be honest, because it's more according to the formula. And yeah, we use also the same method like the previous one, using the last level and trend. Don't forget to stabilize it using F4 and multiply the trend with the period ahead, and also multiply it with the seasonal factors. And after that, we just need to track it down again. And don't forget to also change the number of period ahead for each trend to 2, and then to 3, and also to 4. And there you have it. We finally have all of the forecasts of the 5-year period using the Winters model. However, as usual, after we have found this one, I would also better to recommend to use the last for forecast period, which use the last five seasonal factors because it's more accurate and it's more according to the formula. And yeah, now we're just gonna do the error after this, which is as usual to find the measurement of forecast error to whether to conclude that this method is good or it is accurate or no. And as usual, the error can be found by forecast minus demand. And in this case, just click the cell of forecast and demand, and there you have it, your error. Don't forget to take it down, and also as usual, don't forget to sum it up because it can be used to find the TS. And it also represents the bias. And for the error absolute, just use the formula of apps and then just click the error and then just take it down again. And then just use the sum of all absolute error to find the MAT. And after that, we just need to find the error square, which we can find by just using the sum square and to square the error on the error absolute. But in this case, I'm just going to use the error because I have used the error absolute too much. And then there you have it, the error square. And as usual, don't forget to take it down again until the bottom. And yeah, don't forget to sum it up again because it can be used to find the MSE, which is really important. After that, as usual, we're gonna also find the error percentage which can be found by using 100 multiplied by the error absolute divided by the demand, which is kind of far in this case. And then after we have finally clicked the cells, we're just gonna enter it and just need to take it down as usual. And after we take it down, don't forget to remember to count the sum of the error percentage, which will be really useful in finding the MAPE later on. So after we have found out the errors, we're gonna go to the MSE now. And for the MSE, we're gonna use the Excel formula first. We're gonna use the sum square and click on the first error. Sorry, I missed the error. And then don't forget to stabilize it using the F4 as usual. And then click it again or just type it again. But this time don't stabilize it because we need to be accumulative by doing so. Then click the corresponding period cell and then just enter it. After that, we found our MSE and we just need to take it down until the end. And we found our MSE, the cumulative one, on the final one. And after that, we're gonna go to the MAT after we're finding the accumulative MSE. And for the MAT, we're gonna use the Excel formula first, as usual, using the sum. And we're gonna click on the error first. And remember, don't forget to stabilize or lock the first error using the F4. And we're also gonna divide it by the corresponding period by just clicking the cell of the period. And we're just gonna enter it and just gonna take it down until the end as usual. And we found the accumulative MAT. And then we're gonna go to the MAPE, which is also gonna use the Excel first, and we're gonna use the average first. So we're gonna click the error percentage first. And then we're also gonna click the and then we're gonna also stabilize the first value again as usual to make it accumulative, and then we're gonna enter it again and just take it down again. And we found our MAPE, which is quite good actually. And lastly, we're gonna go to the RTS, which is we're gonna do it by using the Excel way first. We're gonna sum it first, and we're gonna use the sum to count the error. And remember, don't forget to stabilize the first value as usual, so it can retain its value and be accumulative until the end. And we're gonna also click the MAT cell, and don't forget to stabilize the first value of the cell first by using F4 and just enter it. And take it down as after we found the first TS until the end. And there you have it. We finally found all of the error measurements, and don't forget to highlight it using background colors, maybe as blue or water. After that, we finally found our calculation. And as usual, we're gonna clarify it first, whereas for MAT, we're gonna use the normal formula, which is the number of total of absolute error divided by demand, and in this case we already do it, and when we enter it, we found the same value, and then for the MAP we're gonna also do the same case, whereas we're gonna calculate the total of error percentage and divide it by the total of n, and in this case we also get the same result as the Excel calculation. And for the MSE we are also gonna use the error square divided by the number of period, and we also get the same result from the MSE. And then there you have it. After that we can also count the bias, which we can just copy from the total of errors. And then for the TS, it's actually we can just use the total of errors divided by the MAT. And we also found a similar result or the same result with the Excel calculation. And for the TS range, we're gonna find the highest one, which is 2.68, and the lowest one is minus 1.42. Which is good because it's not too under forecasted or over forecasted, and it's a set that it's also reliable and then are not biased. For standard deviation, we're just gonna calculate 1.25 multiplied to the MAT, and in this case we have a good standard deviation that's not too high and it's quite low. And this indicates that actually this Winters model is actually good for this case, because in our case there is actually some trend or seasonality, and since Winters model also takes seasonality and trend into account, so it does fit the demand that we have here. And that's why we would say that this Winters model method is more suitable with our questions, and it does give us the correct forecast to be used for the 5-year of operation in states. However, we're gonna conclude it after this when comparing it with other methods. Okay, so now we're coming to the last part, which is the conclusion part, to decide which method is the best, the most reliable, and the most accurate to use for forecasting. And in this case, we're gonna start with the Winters model first, which is arguably the best, the most accurate, and the most fitting method for this forecasting of the 5-year operations for hockey, because it has the lowest MAT, MAP, and MSE. Although in terms of bias and DS, it has slightly higher one than the Holt model, but still, it has a lower standard deviation than Holt model, but it still also has a good and balanced TS range. However, we cannot say so because we haven't even compared to the Holt model, and before we jump into the conclusion, we're gonna compare all of these error measurements with the Holt model first, starting from MAT, MAP, MSE bias, TS, and also TS range and standard deviation. But also with some factors like errors and other things before we gonna jump into conclusion. So when you compare to Holt model, it seems that Holt model has a higher MAT, MAP, and MSE, but lower bias and DS when we compare it to the one in the Winters model. But still, does it mean that Holt model is better than Winters model? No, it's not. It means that Winters model is still better because despite that it has higher bias and DS and error measurements, it has lower error percentage compared to the one in Holt model, which implies it has lower error than the Holt model one, and it also has lower MAT, MAP, and MSE compared to Holt model. And in terms of squared error or the absolute error, it also has lower amount, which means that the model is also better and good when compared to Holt model, and arguably the most accurate one or the more accurate one than Holt model, which must be used to forecast the next 4-quarter demand in the 5-year of operations of hockey in the United States. However, we're also gonna compare Holt model to simple exponent first, whereas in this case, we said Holt model actually has a lower error than the Winters model, but still, it's not as good as Winters model because it has higher MAT, MAP, and MSE, although it has lower bias and DS and quite of a similar TS range. But when compared to simple exponent, it's way better than Holt model than simple exponent because it has trend, but still, the difference in MAT, MAP, and MSE is not that significant, and it's quite similar for the results, but the difference is that Holt model has trend and it has lower error arguably, despite that they have a higher MAT, MAP, and MSE, but they have a lower bias TS and a better range of TS range. Although maybe the difference of the results in the other measurement is not that big, but still, it shows that Holt model is better than simple exponent and more reliable because it has lower error level than the simple exponent, and still it has like a lower TS, which is good, and it indicates that if we want to forecast whether not using meter model, we can also use Holt model to forecast our prefix operation in the United States for hockey. However, it doesn't mean that simple exponent is really bad because we haven't compared it to the moving average. Although it's not as good as Holt model, but over the moving average, it's arguably more reliable, better, and more accurate because it accounts the first four forecasts, while moving average didn't. Because moving average didn't even account the first four forecasts, which make it incomplete for the forecast, while for the exponent, they account it, although the MAT, MAP, and MSE is higher in simple exponent, but it's maybe because they have more complete forecasts, while the moving average didn't even have the complete one. Yet still, the error is still quite a bit higher in the moving average when compared to the one in simple exponent. And in the simple exponent, they have like quite of a lower bias. Or excuse me, let me correct this one first a bit because it's quite of a misleading. And simple exponent also has better TS range and arguably like better TS and bias because it's lower than that. However, we can see that if despite that they have higher MAP than the moving average, it has low MSE than moving average, which is good because MSE is more important than MAT and MAPE. And the error is also lower on the moving exponential than moving average, which is really good. Because we try to minimize the error as low as possible. And the TS is also quite of better in the simple exponent and it's lower and it has better range than the simple exponent. I mean the moving average in the simple exponent. But the last four forecasts of the simple exponent moving average isn't as reliable or as accurate as the Holt or Winters, but still, they can be used as a standard number to forecast or as a standard base number to forecast the upcoming demand. So they can maybe like have a script about something that what they can forecast or a number that they can use as a maybe as basis. However, it doesn't mean that moving average is really bad despite that it doesn't even count the forecast error. But still, it shows that simple exponent is way more reliable than moving average because moving average doesn't even count for a forecast. Yet we're also gonna conclude what can we imply from every of these method. For moving average simple exponent, realize that the result is quite similar, while the forecast is also have the same principle. Yet still, both of these methods can only be used and can only recommended to be used as a standard number for forecast. But still, they have like maybe the highest or the moderately high number of error and MSE and others, which is quite not good because we try to minimize MSE as good as possible. Then for the Holt, it's better than simple exponent moving average because it takes trend into account, whereas moving average and simple exponent didn't even take trend into account, which doesn't really fit the data in this case. And yeah, Holt model, despite they have quite of a not really different data of MAT and MAP and MSE compared to the simple exponent, they have lower MSE, lower bias, and lower TS, which is good because we try to minimize it as low as possible. And lastly, our final models or method, which is the Winter model, is arguably the best, most reliable, and the most accurate method to forecast the demand in this case. Because in this case, we realize that if we want to forecast the figure of operation demand, we must use Winter model because it has the lowest MAT, MAP, MSE, bias, TS, and others. Whereas it minimizes the value, which is good because it minimizes the error. And we also learned that it fits our data, our case more because it fits our data, whereas Windows model takes trend and seasonality into account, and so does our data, which means that our data fits more with the Windows model. And because of that, we will say that Windows model is more accurate and the most accurate one to be used. And for more data, we also imply that we actually have quite a good data, And we actually have trend and seasonality in this case. And it also indicates that we managed to compete with Hockey managed to compete with some other competitor like KFC, McDonald's, and others. But still, KFC and Hockey can also use the forecast data from exponent and moving average, and it can also use the Holt method if they can even gonna use the Windows model because there's no seasonality, but they still can use the trend. And yeah, that's it, because we learned that our data has a trend and seasonality during this 4 year of operation, which shows that Rockies are also adapting their strategies to compete with KFC and also McDonald's and others. So, we should guess that Rocky should use the Winters model to forecast their upcoming demand, although they can also use Holt if there's only trend. Well then, I guess that's all for the forecasting explanation, and thank you for listening and see you later. Goodbye.